Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast, is sponsored by the UPS Store Canada.
Standing By, the podcast. Hi, I'm Terry DeMonte. That's Ted Bird. The Standing By podcast gives me something to do since I was retired 2 years ago. Almost.
Get out.
Yep. There's the door. That's happy retirement. Let me get your stuff.
Yeah, thanks for that 45-year stellar Hall of Fame career. See ya.
So the podcast is a nice sideline project for me, Ted. So I appreciate you supporting the podcast. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and it also helps me to pay my bills, so it's win-win. Yeah,
good.
Something for you to do, and something I have to do.
It's something we still love to do, and as you've seen my posts on social media, you know how much I enjoy doing it and how much I miss doing it. So this is a nice distraction for me. It is brought to you by a number of longtime supporters, and we want to start by saying thank you to David Drucker. David Drucker is a man that Ted and I met when he was in one of his startup businesses probably 30 years ago. Ted and I used to always get our cell phones from David.
I still have the same cell phone number.
Do you really?
The same phone number from the original phone that David gave to me. He gave me a promotional line.
Well,
and I still have the same number. It's never changed.
When I mentioned at a lunch to David Drucker that we were going to have a podcast and we would like to, we were looking for a title sponsor, he said, well, I'm the king of the UPS Store Canada, and we would like to be your title sponsor. And we're deeply grateful. Pardon me. If you don't know about, sorry about that. You don't know about the UPS Store Canada. It is a locally run, locally owned business in your community. So if you're a small business owner that runs a business out of home, you probably already know about the UPS Store Canada. If you order a lot of stuff from Amazon and you're never home, you may already know about the UPS Store Canada. If you have documents to shred or long-time family heirlooms that you need to ship across the country, you may have already visited a UPS store. They can handle just about everything for you. They can shred documents. They can organize passport photos. They can pack your stuff, ship your stuff, print your documents, anything that pertains to getting your business moving or your household moving. UPS Store Canada can handle it. And like I said, there's an entrepreneur in that store, just like you, trying to run that business to help you run your business. There are 370 locations across the country, and you can find one in a community close to you. Our thanks to the UPS Store Canada. Go to theupsstore.ca. We have Madam President with us today.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes, for a change, Tare, you're not the prettiest one in the room. It goes me, and then you, and then our guest Eleanor Noble, and then Poseidon, of course, is the prettiest. But Eleanor is the second prettiest person in the room today, and I should not objectify her like that because she's an accomplished young lady. She is a Canadian actress based out of Montreal. She is the National President of ACTRA. I know the acronym, but I don't know the, if I tried to say the association, the Alliance
of Canadian Cinema, Television, Radio Artists.
She's the national president of that, and she is a rescuer of wiener dogs, and she is currently bereaved. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Eleanor, thanks for being with us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're going to have some fascinating conversation, I think, today about performing in the arts and the performing arts community across the country. I want to start with this. I'm curious as to why anybody would want to be president of an association so big.
Right? But why?
Sounds like she's asking herself that question.
Yeah.
Some days you do.
What was I thinking?
Some days you do. But why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you want to be president of a union as mighty and great as ACTRA? I love the aspect of negotiating. So that was one of the first things that really inspired me to want to run. I thought, I'd like to be at the helm of that.
Wow.
So that was one thing. And wanting to really unite the country in a way that we'd never done really before.
As an acting community, you
As
mean?
an acting community, making us ACTRA strong across the country, which we were, but we're also autonomous branches. And I just wanted to see, even though we have autonomy in each of the branches that we could unify ourselves even more. And it's really important more than ever now. So
I think so too. I actually was confused when I moved out to BC because I'm a longtime ACTRA member. And when I moved to UBC, it's ACTRA /
UBCP.
UBCB?
UBCP.
UBCP.
Yeah.
And what is that? Is it it's,
Union of British Columbia
Okay.
Performers.
And is that what you're talking about, that you want to unify that, or
That we have unified. So
Okay.
that was a break off many decades ago that took place in BC. And then through the 80s, the end of the 80s, early beginning of the 90s, they worked very hard at bringing them back to ACTRA. And so now they have the two acronyms, but they are very much ACTRA members, and we work together, and we're very united. So we're very happy to have
Can you
that
talk
alliance.
about what I not that I was forced to join ACTRA, but in my 30s, I scored a really good gig with the CBC, CBC Television. I was hosting a children's show called Switchback at the time, and the executive producer said to me, we got to get you into ACTRA. And ACTRA at the time was notoriously difficult to join. It was really, really tough to get in. And
Yeah.
I said, I don't know how you're going to do that, but I guess the CBC, who had a regional show, probably had somebody on speed dial that they could call, and I became a member of the union. And I began to realize how important it was as a performer, because as the longer I was in ACTRA and the longer I was in a business where performing was part of it, the more I understood how much performers are taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
And I know that if you're listening to the podcast, you're thinking, oh, shut up with your microphone and your easy job. But it really was true. Performers were getting, and I remember in Montreal in the 1980s and 90s, businesses would pay announcers $50 or $60 to go read a commercial.
Yeah.
And I remember my first ACTRA job for reading a commercial. And not only was the rate so much higher, but every 13 weeks, another check would turn up in my mailbox.
Right.
And I thought, why is this happening? And then I began to learn that's what that service was worth. That's what a
Absolutely.
performer should be paid to do those things.
Absolutely.
And that's why I became this, real supporter of ACTRA. And the reason I'm telling that story is I want people to understand why it's important that actors, riggers, lighting people, radio announcers, television presenters, why is it important that they are a member of the union and the union protect them?
Yeah, well, we started off with $1 a hauler and worked our way up from there. But yeah, it's to protect members from not being exploited. So if you're selling a product, let's say, and you're doing a radio spot, you wouldn't want them to use your radio spot for eternity without any pay,
Right.
a little cut of their massive profits. So yes, we work in cycles, and they purchase cycles, and then they repay you. They don't have to bring you back into studio, but they're going to repay you for that. And you get a pension and benefits so that you can live and support a family in some instances, and you're given a proper wage. So it may seem high up front, but we are precarious workers. We're the original gig workers.
Yeah.
And so when there's that kind of instability, we get a proper pay that is reasonably balanced with how you can earn a livelihood.
That was something else I didn't understand. I remember Daintree, God love her. Daintree was at Montreal ACTRA for many years.
She's still alive. She's
And-
just retired.
Yeah, she's just retired. and she called me one day and she said, you've let your dues lapse.
Ooh.
And I said, well, I'm not doing anything anymore. My TV gigs are over and I don't get any radio gigs.
Keep
And she said-
paying them, man.
And she said, don't you want your pension? And I said, I have a pension? And she said, yeah, you're going to have to pay, I think I paid a fine and whatever and got my dues back in order.
Yeah.
And that pension today, after 30 plus years, is quite, it's, I can't buy a mansion or anything, but
It's something.
yeah, it's something, and it's contributing to my retirement.
Yeah. I did, and this is where I met Eleanor, actually. I did commercials. I was the English voice for Renault Depot in Quebec for about 15 years. And I haven't looked at my pension. I don't know what it is. And I haven't done those commercials since COVID was the end of that.
Yeah.
And I knew it was over. I was telling Terry this story the other day. I knew it was over because they used to have, we'd go in for the recording session. There would be the French guy. There would be me for Renault Depot, and then there would be an English guy for Rona because they're owned by the same company.
Right.
And then one day during COVID, I heard him go, now available at Rona and Renault Depot. And I thought, well, that's the end of that.
It's a good run.
As it happens, which
yeah.
is why we put all those protections in place so that you have something anyway.
Yeah, I keep paying my dues when they come
Yeah.
up. I haven't had an ACTRA gig in
No,
over
me
3
neither.
year but I
No.
keep paying the dues. Boy.
Yeah, I'm a
good.
member in good standing,
Yeah.
as they
Very
say.
good.
You and me both.
Very good. Badge of
Comedians
honor.
are notoriously underpaid. Is there a crossover there? Do you have comedians in ACTRA? And and I'm sure that you do have ACTRA members who part of what they do is stand up comedy. Can they do a stand up comedy gig? Does that violate union regulations if they
No,
go?
and that would actually, I don't really know the specifics of doing a stand-up on the stage. I don't know if they require to be any kind of equity, because equity is the theater
Right.
union. I actually...
If I put you on the spot, I'm
Yeah, you
sorry.
have put me on the spot.
Because,
First question,
well,
you know?
you talk about a group that needs a union.
Yeah.
The first time I ever did stand-up comedy,
If they do television spots, they would be protected under the union.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did 5 minutes as an opener at the Comedy Works on Bishop Street in 1990 for $25. Last Christmas 2022, over the holidays, I was one of the openers at the Comedy Nest at the old Forum.
Right.
$25.
Yeah.
Exactly the same amount as 32 years previously.
Wow.
Comedians need.
Well, if they were filming it to be televised,
Yeah.
then you would fall under an ACTRA contract.
okay, well,
sure.
yeah.
I'm curious also, and I know the population at large probably doesn't know this, Eleanor, but as a member, I'm aware of it. Recently, ACTRA's been in a struggle with some really big businesses. Wendy's comes to mind, and there's a few other ones that go ahead and name them if you like. And my understanding is these advertising, tell me if I got this right, advertising agencies who run the advertising campaigns of these massive, massive corporations don't want to pay ACTRA performers anymore.
Correct.
They want to use scabs.
Correct. So we have a national commercial agreement, which we refer to as the NCA.
Right.
And when we went into negotiations with two entities, the Institute of Canadian Agencies and the Alliance of Canadian Advertisers, sorry, it's because ICA and the ACA, they wanted to have an option of opting in and opting out of using ACTRA members, which is a non-starter. So we said, no, you work with us. We've had a partnership for 60 years, and we'll continue our partnership under this collective agreement, and let's start negotiating and making improvements and doing whatever we need to do. But they weren't interested, so they walked away from the table and locked us out. So basically, the advertising agencies, you've gotten that right, have refused to work with ACTRA members, though they claim that they're very open to working with ACTRA members. They love working with ACTRA members, but they'll decide how they want to pay us.
Right.
And
And-
sometimes they might pay us the wages that we had under the NCA, and sometimes they won't. And sometimes they'll use non-union, and sometimes they won't. So that we absolutely stand by our belief that not our belief, but what we have is a collective agreement, and we want them to come back to the table to sit down and negotiate with us properly and use ACTRA members. They make extremely high profit margin, extremely high profit margin. So it's not a matter of cost because we are a very tiny portion of their budget, a very tiny portion of their budget. The brands, Wendy's, H&R Block, Home Hardware, Canadian Tire.
all
Who
these
else do we have?
tiny companies.
Sleep Country, who are using advertising agencies who have locked us out.
Right.
So we have been campaigning for a boycott to these brands so that they can have awareness, because we don't know how aware they are, but they better be aware now that they are using advertising agencies that are using non-union performers. And we want them to either change agencies using an agency that are signatories with our agreement, or get their advertising agency to become signatories once again to our agreement and use union members.
What precipitated this? Was this the new? It's very fashionable now at companies everywhere, all across North America, to slash and cut and try and drive profits as high as you can drive them, no matter how many jobs you lose or how shitty the wages are that you pay. Was that what precipitated this? That advertising agencies decided that the $1 billion that they were making every year wasn't enough, and it was time to pick the pockets of the guys that read the commercials?
There's an interesting fact that North America is the last place pretty much on earth that is using union members in advertisement.
Okay.
And so they're after that.
So it's because
they want to just take away the jurisdiction. Right. They did it in the UK, they did it in Australia, and they're coming after us. And then if they break us, which they won't, then they'll try to attempt it in the US. But
how were they able to do it in those other places?
It's the internet. You and I can go online tomorrow and not apply, but
make an audition, make a demo.
Or you can go on some websites and they'll say, we're looking for voice announcers for these 5 different radio ads. And you can read them and submit them, and then they decide what they're going to pay you. And it's like 10 cents a word or $1 a sentence or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's peanuts is what it is.
And they just lost their jurisdiction. They couldn't get to an agreement, and the advertisers took over. And that was that for them.
So there's no legal recourse
Well, I don't have all the details on the UK and Australia, but
I understood. But for you, if you can't come to an agreement with them, is there a point where
right
lawyers
now,
get involved, or are they already?
For sure, because the ICA has claimed that we don't have a collective agreement, and so that dispute is in front of the Ontario Labour Board right now to determine that. We have a big fat book that says we have 60 years of a partnership. And that's a collective agreement. There has been some complaint, and we all agree that the agreement became quite complicated. So we've worked diligently over the last year to simplify and modernize it. So it's amazing what our staff has done to make it user-friendly, which it never really was before, which the advertisers love. When they saw it, they were like, this is fantastic. And so we're hoping that the advertising agencies bite into that and want to come back to the table with us, because that was a lot of work that was overdue. And so now it's user-friendly, and we are very proud of that work. So, yeah, I forget the original part of the question that you asked me.
I was just asking you if
legal repercussions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it is with the Ontario Labour Board right now.
Are you in there banging on the table and saying, listen? Like, are you part of it?
I'm not in there at the moment. No. I may be there eventually. Yeah. We go back in the fall. Those dates are out of our hands. That's what the Ontario government decides to get us in there, the Labour Board. So, yes, there may be times where I will be called in. But I'm certainly at the negotiating table when we are at the negotiating table, banging the table hard.
Got you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, excuse me, I'm curious, does ACTRA have an involvement in trying to help draw productions to the city?
Absolutely.
Really? How do you go about that?
Absolutely. Well, we go down to LA and we meet with all the studios and we tell them what a great city we have and what incredible crews we have and what incredible, unbelievable creme de la creme talent we have in this city to come up and produce film and television. And we do hear sometimes, once in a while, concerns about our politics here, and we assure them that there's many, many people in the city who speak without a French accent, and if they would like more international sounding, we've got plenty of people who have slight accents, as they do anywhere in the world. Yeah. So I think eventually we'll make some progression on getting rid of phobia against accents. Because I don't know any place in the world where anybody can go where there aren't a slew of accents everywhere.
There are Hollywood directors that think everybody talk like that?
Yeah.
Really?
There is a perception, and so we assure them that that is not a true perception,
Yeah.
and then they're related. And then the second question is, can we get around because there's so much construction in Montreal? And as we know, that's a shared.
Our reputation follows us everywhere.
Seriously,
Wow.
yeah.
Everybody knows about the construction in Montreal, but we assure them that no, we can work with them to make sure that there's an easy path for everybody to get to work, and that they will have availability of places to do remarkable shots.
And
that
we're
they
very
want.
good at closing streets.
Yes,
so we can
we're
help
very
you
good.
close
We
the
have
streets.
so many extra orange cones to put up to.
Yeah. So does
Yeah.
the level of Hollywood activity in Montreal sort of wax and wane? Or
Absolutely. Yeah, and it depends. It depends what they're producing and where they want to go. So that's the nature of the beast. But we're always happy to welcome them here, and also to create Canadian productions. We have a great we do that great on the French side, and we need to do that more on the English side across the country.
You've taken on quite a task as the national president of ACTRA. How much has that bitten into your time that you would have otherwise spent with the performing aspect of your career?
I do both.
Yeah.
And so it can be a bit of a heavy, tight schedule
Yeah.
at times, but I managed to work it out. I've only lost one or two gigs where I absolutely had to be in Toronto and couldn't swing it to be back here. But for the most part, people have been very accommodating and understanding and have been flexible with my schedule.
So are you
But it is-
auditioning still and
Absolutely.
everything? Really, eh? Wow,
Yep.
that's got to be...
In the middle of meetings and getting
Wow.
on planes and driving around
Wow.
and doing all of that stuff, I sure am. And you know what? You want your national president to be on the ground. You
Yeah.
want your national president to be working, and you want your national president to be able to speak
Yeah.
from a point of experience.
Does your reputation precede you now as the national president of ACTRA when you go for an audition?
I get a little nervous sometimes in the audition room for commercials when my friends are like, "It's the president." I'm like, "No, we're in a
Ixnay on the
dispute."
Esmond Prey.
I'm like, "I don't know if they made the connection yet."
The president's on set.
Yeah.
And then they wait after my audition and apologize to me. I'm like, "It's okay, it's okay." They keep, they keep
Is that
calling
how
me,
you got
so.
started, Eleanor? Your background was you started as a performer?
I went to theater school.
Uh-huh.
I went to Dawson College. I attended the Dome Theater. So that was a 3-year professional theater program. And then I was out of the gate before I even graduated. I got cast in Are You Afraid of the Dark, which was my first gig and my first ACTRA credit.
Oh.
And then I got into animation pretty much right away out of that. And that was it. I got an agent right away. And
That's fantastic. And did you ever have any, I've asked all the performers we've had on, did you ever consider leaving the city, moving either to Toronto or Los Angeles?
I did, and I did all of that.
You did?
Oh, you
I
did make
did.
the move.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
made many moves.
wow.
In fact, when I was 21 years old, I hopped on back then, theater was still a prominent way to earn a living, way, way, way back. And I was probably at the cusp of how it kind of changed a little bit. But I hopped on a bus by myself, and I stopped in every city that I could
Wow.
going west and auditioned at all the theaters, and then got work out of that and lived in Vancouver for a while. And then I came back and I lived in Toronto for a while. And then I ended up working a lot in Montreal. So I was like, well, I'm hitting that 401 an awful lot. So how about I just
Move
reestablish myself back home? That was fantastic. And then I landed a television series, which was great, called The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo with Pat Morita. He was in
Wow.
that. And I played Shelby Woo's best friend. And so, yes, so I continued my career here. And then I thought I was doing, after I finished that television series, I was doing a lot of voice work for animation, dubbing, all of that. And then I had one of those existential crises going, I went to theater school. Did I go to theater school to become a voice actor? Or did I go to theater school to become an Oscar-winning actor? And so I hopped on a plane and spent some time in LA. I did 2 pilot seasons there. I had a manager there. And then my father had a heart attack, and he's fine. Good. But I came back home, and then I thought, I had a lot of time to think in LA, and I thought, my gosh, I have so much fun in studio. So much fun.
Doing the voice work.
I actually love what I do.
Yeah.
I do get lots of opportunity to do film and television, and I do a lot of stage. And I'm like, I have a really full-rounded career in Montreal. And I'm sitting here in LA, and if I had all the money in the world, that would be superb.
Yeah.
But when I came home, I was kind of content and at peace with the fact that I could have a full career as an actor right here in Montreal. And so I
think
stayed.
it's great because it runs contrary to the narrative you hear all the time about you got to go to Toronto, you got to be in Toronto, you got to be in New York, you got to be in LA. You know, if you want to, as you point out, have a full rounded experience as a performer. Montreal always had the reputation of somewhere you had to leave. That's not true, I guess, anymore.
No, and it depends how you go after your career and what you want
Right.
and which angle you want your career. And Toronto is there's so much production there, but you
Right.
also have a much larger population of performers that you're competing against. Everything is in a ratio, so it balances out here. We have a smaller group of actors and a slightly less work, but the opportunities are there. And if you go after it the right way, you can have a full career anywhere.
Do you work the French side at all?
I don't.
No, eh?
I don't.
Is it different on is the French side? Like Terry tells a great story about when he worked at Chaume, and they were in the same building as a couple of French radio stations. And you told me the story. I think it was you who told me the story about you could tell whether a person worked by for the English or the French side by the car they drove. If he went down to the parking garage
Yeah.
and there was a Corolla, he works at the English station,
Right.
Yeah.
and there was a Bentley, she
Yeah.
works at the French station.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, the budgets and the promotion, the budgets that they have at Radio Canada, less so at TVA because TVA has been doing a lot of cutting, I understand. But the public broadcaster in Quebec, I mean, we still watch it out in BC. Their productions are massive and
Right.
huge and have funding that I think the English broadcasters don't have in Quebec.
But you're playing to a much
that's-
a much bigger market, and
Yeah.
and you've also said, Terry, Quebec has its own French
Star
Quebec
system.
has its own star system.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They've
You're-
done a tremendous
Yeah.
job. I mean, really, they are. If the rest of Canada could do that,
Yeah.
that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think we've all always been sort of slightly envious of the French side that they had a star system. They had
Yeah.
their own magazines on the rack. They
Yeah.
had their own.
Well,
award
they're
Their own
probably not
awards, their
comparing
own-
probably not comparing themselves to the U.S. the way that English Canada
Yeah.
does, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I want to tiptoe into a little bit of political waters. Not well. I'm actually curious. I'd like to have a civilized discussion about a controversial topic, and that is the pursuit of diversity in the arts.
Yes.
That is a hot potato, high wire act, however you want to describe it,
Yes.
because it's controversial on so many levels in terms of casting and in terms of productions and in terms of the arts itself. Some people say, do you sacrifice the artistic integrity of a work, a play, a movie, because you're trying to pursue diversity in your casting, or do you just let art be art and there's no pursuit of what some people call political correctness? I know it's referred to, like the CBC is running a commercial right now that pays tribute to representation, which is important, and it's something that I think is long overdue being addressed. But what I want to know is, at what point does it interfere with somebody's vision for a film, for a piece, for a play? Like, are we risking this sounds incredibly, I'm going to sound like such a douchebag. Are we risking artistic integrity by following down that path?
I don't think he sounds like a douchebag. I think it's a legitimate question.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Answering your question.
Yes.
Not what you just said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Long-winded question, but I like all topics in this arena, I'm tippy-toe. I don't want to.
No, the reality is when you walk, if you live in a multicultural city like we do here, cosmopolitan city, and Toronto, anywhere, you don't just see one type of person. You just don't.
Absolutely.
So our everyday is diverse. And then what we see on screens or on stage, then all of a sudden gets completely whitewashed for some reason. And then we believe that nobody's going to watch these stories unless we make it relatable to you two
Right.
and me.
Right.
And that's not true, because then we're cutting out an entire population of people that the stories are not relating to because they don't see themselves represented in the stories. It's not a threat to, all of a sudden film and television going down the tubes because now there's diversity in there.
But
it makes it more interesting. And look what they did with Hamilton. I haven't seen Hamilton yet, but what they did with that was they switched.
Yeah.
And we didn't hear anything about that.
No, nobody
we heard
cared.
what a great musical
Nobody
it is.
cared.
It's won
But
every award.
My question is, if a director says, God, I love this guy for this part. This guy would be great in this part. And the casting director says, we don't have enough diversity yet, so we can't give it to that guy. We're gonna have to look for
Ultimately, that decision is up to the director and producer.
It is.
It's not up to the casting.
Okay.
Casting does their best to provide as much diversity and
As they can. Right.
and to follow what the director and the producer wants. We expect and hope that a casting director is creative enough that when they see 20 roles for white people, that they're starting to suggest people that they know that have the talent and the chops. And there's many, many, many millions of actors across this country who are diverse, who are amazingly talented.
That's the thing.
And that they're brought forward, and that the directors and producers see them and have that opportunity to shift and make their productions better.
And how does that is that currently in play? Like if a Hollywood production comes up to Montreal and wants to use Montreal because it's a very European-looking city, and they're casting local people, are they encouraged or pushed, or is there rules that they have to follow in terms of diversity when they cast the production?
Absolutely.
There
is a push. There is a push to be more diverse. We negotiated in our last IPA, which is our film and television agreement, that they had to make best efforts to always broaden the scope in this regard. And one of the things that we just dealt with was we brought a hair and makeup grievance to... We filed a grievance on hair and makeup, and we just won a settlement on it, which is great. So we've been having conversations with producers about diversity and about treatment of diverse actors on set as well. So double-handed. And with this settlement, we will have 5 days prior to any bargaining where we discuss all of these issues. And it's the education of allowing the producers to know and understand that they need to go in this direction, and that it's available for them, and that they won't be disappointed once they go. People are ready and they're talented. So
for people who are not in the community, can you explain what a grievance is? Something happened
because a hair and makeup grievance is not something you normally hear about in labor disputes.
So in the hair and makeup trailer, something transpired.
So we found out from many of our members, our BIPOC members, that when they would get to set, they struggled with the fact that they were not being treated the same way as we would be treated as white people sitting in the makeup chair and the hair chair. So often makeup artists would not have foundations that matched their skin tone.
Right.
The hair people did not have proper equipment or products to deal with different textured hairs. And a lot of performers had some terrible experiences where either they looked terrible, had to come to set already made up, or had some hair damage or things like that. Just horrible, horrible treatment, and not being treated equitably when they got to set and being made to feel like they were a problem. And we realized that this was a violation of the Charter of Human Rights to not be treated equitably at work. And so we took to the labor board, we filed a grievance against the producers to say you must hire hair and makeup artists who are qualified
and prepared
with proper equipment to do so. And
those artists exist?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes, they do. And we said if they couldn't find them or there weren't enough, that they were responsible to make sure that they got the training before they show up on set, so that actors are treated equitably once they get there.
Eleanor Noble is our guest. She's the president of ACTRA. We want to take a moment to thank a couple of more of our supporters. As Ted and I always say on the podcast, I know what you're thinking, another commercial, but these are people that believe in what we do. And in a business that's very difficult to break through in, we can't compete with Jason Bateman and Smartless.
We can't?
No. Nobody's paying us $80 million
They're
for
not?
the podcast. We can't compete with Joe Rogan. We have local supporters who have been just terrific. And we have a very surprising, wonderful man who's a supporter of the podcast. We had lunch with him, and he said, I want to be a supporter of the podcast. And I said, what do you do? He said, well, I run an engineering firm. And I thought, what the hell are you doing sitting having lunch with us, two knuckleheads?
Sean Smith, who's got a brain as big as All Outdoors, and is just the nicest guy you'd ever meet, runs a company called Vozwin. Vision to innovation. What is it you say, Terry? He will take an idea from
out of your head,
yeah,
and put it in your hands.
Yeah, if you have an idea for an invention, or if you have an existing business and you have an idea for an innovation within that business, and it has an engineering component, and you don't know how to do it, that's where Sean steps in and his team. And they will take you through the entire process. They will take you through the development process. They know how to deal with all the legal ramifications, patents, and what have you, and the marketing, getting it to market, the whole deal. They start at the beginning. You tell them your idea, and if it has a mechanical engineering and design component, or electrical engineering and design, industrial engineering and design, software development, or all four, they have developed inexpensive packages to help with solidifying your vision and developing requirements. And then they do the CTO thing, Chief Technology Officer.
Oh, that.
I don't have a Chief Technology Officer. Well, we do that too. Vozwin does that as well. They take you through the whole process. And it's so surprising. Sean told us that he's had multiple people call him up and say, I heard those two knuckleheads on the podcast talking about your engineering firm, and I thought maybe you can help me out. So we have an excellent inventor demographic, Terry.
Yes, it's fantastic.
On the podcast. You can check them out at Vozwin.com, VOZWIN.com. And thank you, Sean, for your ongoing support.
And one of the things that is common about all the people that support us is our longtime relationship with them, and the fact that we believe in their businesses and what they do. And that's never been more true than it is with the Mersons. Merson Automotive. This is a great story. Well, it's not a great story. It's a tough story for Ted, because Ted's car blew up, and now he's looking for a car, and he's not going to buy a new car. He's going to buy a what do they call them? They're not used.
They're pre-owned.
Pre-owned.
Yes.
He's going to get a
I'm
pre-owned
looking
car.
for a pre-owned.
And when we were coming to the podcast studio this morning, I asked him how the search was going, and he said he found something. And the first thing you're going to do
is take it to Merson,
Yeah.
and Celso's going to put it up on the hoist, and he's going to look underneath, and hopefully he's going to say, yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Make him an offer, because the last time I took one to Celso, he put it up on the hoist, and he said, ooh, that girl's, you want
Stay
no part
away.
of that girl. Yeah, she's been on way too many dates. So I did stay away. But yeah, they're just the best, the Mersons. And Terry and I have been doing business with them and speaking on their behalf for 25 years. And we speak on their behalf because we believe in them. They're honest people. And they will not sell you anything for your vehicle, a service or a part that you don't need. And above and beyond that, they'll give you a heads up as to when you might need it. How many times you've been sitting in the waiting room at Merson, and Charlie will come out from the back and say to Mrs. Hasenfratz, your winter tires are good, but you're probably going to have to start thinking about a new set next season. And your brakes, you're probably good for another 10 to 15,000 kilometers. Like they'll keep you abreast in detail as to where you're at with your maintenance requirements.
Yeah, and if you're like Ted and I, that get, our eyes glaze over when you open the hood of a car and you just don't know anything about it, you want to be able to believe in people and trust them that they're going to do right by you. That's the Mersons.
MersonAuto.com. They're on St. Jacques, west of Cavendish. You can call them up at 514-487-5545 and tell Val I say hi. Every time I phone there, she goes, "What happened now?"
Eleanor Noble is our guest, and it just dawned on me, are we in contravention of our membership by doing a podcast?
No.
Uh-oh.
I thought, holy shit, we could be in trouble.
No.
Okay, good.
an
Eleanor,
interview.
one of the things people have asked me, fellow radio folks over the years, is why is ACTRA so difficult to get into? And or has that changed?
It's changed.
Okay.
It's changed. So yes, when you started, it was six credits. You had to have 6 different credits. Then
It was
we
a
changed
chicken
that
and
to
an
3.
egg thing.
Yeah, we changed that to 3 different credits, and now we're looking at it again to see if we can make it even easier. So that is a work in progress.
Yeah, because I remember, like I said, I got in at the grace of the CBC. That was your typical connection thing. But at the time, you had to go find ACTRA approved work and get
Correct.
credit for that work. But you couldn't get that work if you weren't a member of ACTRA. So it was
Sort of a catch-22.
Yeah, it was a catch-22 a little
But
bit.
everybody starts as a non-union member,
Right.
And then you audition and you hope to land that role.
Yeah, right.
That a producer and director says, yes, I've exhausted looking through all of the ACTRA members, and this person is for it, and then you get your first ACTRA credit, and
Got you.
then you start your journey as an ACTRA member.
I had an experience similar to you. I didn't have any ACTRA credits, and I forget which grocery store chain. It was back when I used to do Don Scary, my Don Cherry imitation on Show'em, and they wanted the character for a commercial. And I was not an ACTRA member, but it was an ACTRA gig, and
So
somebody pulled a string somewhere.
facilitated
and,
it,
and
yeah.
that's how I became a member. I didn't have any credits.
Yay.
And yay indeed,
Yeah.
indeed, and thank God, because that 15-year run with Renault Depot, that's about the only thing I've ever done that's an ACTRA gig.
Well-
I wish I could get something else.
One of my favorite stories is, and I'm gapping on his name, one of the long-time Montreal voices, owned a studio called Listen Audio.
George.
Thank you, George Morris.
Yeah.
Told me a story once about, it was a big beer company, and I think the phrase was, Molson keeps on tasting great. He said one year he made $60,000 from that commercial.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because it went across the country. It ran every 13 weeks, and envelopes kept turning up in his. And that's when I first got interested in ACTRA. I thought, what's this ACTRA business?
Yeah.
How do I get involved in that?
Terry and I used to
can be
joke.
a nice living.
Terry and I used to joke about George, God rest his soul. He owned the studio, and I can specifically remember going and reading an audition for an Air Canada commercial, and George also read the audition at his studio, and he got the gig. And then we used to joke about George sitting around his office. Wonder who'd be good for this? Oh, I know, me.
These are all very good tapes, but I like this one.
But he wouldn't make the call, I don't think, would he? It's ultimately the client who makes the call.
It is.
Probably in consultation with the agency.
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It is. And we try to stop that sort of thing from going on, because it never really looks that good. But
Let's see. Oh, I know.
Who'd be good for this? Eleanor, tell us. Give me a. I'm a bit of a sucker for a. Oh my God! I was on the set with. Have you got one of those stories for me?
oh my goodness,
You must have a few of them.
Yeah. I think the very first time I was really starstruck, it was way at the beginning of my career. It was with George Hamilton.
Oh, cool.
And
That's
he
cool.
looked to me like something out of the, 1940s or 50s.
Yeah.
He really carried this old Hollywood persona with tan behind the ears and just everything to perfection.
Yeah.
He was 100% lovely, but I was quite awestruck by him. So that was fun, because normally I pride myself on feeling as an equal to everybody, right? You you're just more in the spotlight than I am.
Right.
Terrible around sports people. I'm a huge sports fan.
is that
So
right?
if I run into a
So
sports,
that's when you become a groupie?
that's when I,
Fangirl?
Yes,
Yeah.
start screaming and saying
Yeah.
hysterical things, and then I walk away. And
Like who? Any examples?
One of my Jock Climby. One time I met him in a
Jock
restaurant.
Climby,
Yeah.
former Montreal Alouette.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
guy, too.
Super
Yeah.
nice guy, and he was at a restaurant, and I told my at that time husband, I said, "Oh my God, I have to say something," and I went up to him, and I was just a mess. I was like, "You're so amazing! You're one of the best players I've ever seen!" And oh my God, I'm such a huge fan. I tried to become a cheerleader so I could be close to you all on the field, and then I walked away, and my partner turned to me and said, "What was that?" And I was like, I don't know, because I never do that at work with whoever I meet.
That's frowned upon, isn't it? I mean, is there? I've
Fawning?
yet to be on a movie set. And I want to ask you about that in a second. But is it true what I read sometimes about do not engage with Mr. So-and-so, do not look him directly in the eye, stay away from him? Is there a lot of that in Hollywood?
Unfortunately, there has been the occasional performer that's put on. I think Eddie Murphy was one of those for a while. I don't know if he's still the same. Those are particular situations. I don't know what it's like to live in a fishbowl like that, where everybody wants to harass you and ask you a million questions and be your best friend, and you don't know them.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't buy into any of that. I think that's a load of fucking nonsense. If you know what, Eleanor, I think if you, and you know this, it is so hard. It takes such such a journey to become a star. And when you choose that life and you pursue that level of fame, and we all know that's what they're pursuing, the Will Smiths, the Eddie Murphys, they all were pursuing excellence and performance for sure.
And notoriety.
And every single one of them knows, and I'm not denying that once you get there, it's difficult to manage, but every single one of them knows that comes with the territory. To me, that's like becoming a professional football player and complaining about the bruises on Monday morning. That doesn't work
Not
for me.
necessarily. So I'm going to slightly disagree, because some people, I would say for the most part, most performers are very genuine to the craft. And not everybody expects to be a superstar. Not everybody wants the limelight on them. And
you're
we
in the
know.
wrong job.
Yeah, it comes with the territory.
You're in the no.
I will say also that pretty much everybody that I've worked with has been respectful and lovely to work with. So I have not had any bad or negative experiences in that regard with somebody shunning me on set or something because they're a name. So they've, for the most part, been very gracious and lovely to work with. It's a big responsibility, and it can be annoying when anybody's coming up to you constantly when you're trying to be in character.
Yep.
When you're shooting film and television, it's always out of sequence, so you're always having to think of the arc of the story. And if you're shooting the end of it, what was your journey before? Because you weren't really in a rehearsal hall doing all that stuff necessarily, and so you need a lot of focus.
This
and a
I
lot
agree
of,
with. That's while you're working. That's when you're on set and while you're working. That I understand. Let me do my work. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
But I've always believed that it takes just as long. It takes just as many seconds to be nice as it does to be an arsehole. So when I see people out in public poo-pooing the public for bothering them, and I know Ted and I, at our peak when we were on television and radio, when there was only television and radio around, we know, we experienced some of it. Not everybody was nice.
Right.
Not everybody had great manners. Not everybody was very timely. Some people didn't wait until we were finished eating.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I get all of that. But I always said to Ted, hey, it takes just as long to be nice.
It does. And I agree. But, sometimes you're going to catch somebody on a bad day. And, of course, our industry is going to highlight that.
Yeah.
They love to thrive on the worst. And that's unfortunate and that can, lead to, being in that hamster wheel of
I think you and I
break.
agree, because I agree with you. When I have a respect for the craft, and when someone's working, I whatever it is you need to do to get where you need to get for that character, That's not the time to go, hey, I loved you and Bewitched.
Right.
You know, there's a 100-year-old
seriously.
reference.
Stick with us for more 60-year-old popular culture references.
Bewitched.
But do you know what I've also found too is that our heyday was 30 years ago.
Yeah,
and
it's-
now I'll
yeah.
be out on the West Island and someone
Yeah.
will meet me and they'll go, "Hey,
Yeah.
didn't you used to be Ted Bird?"
Or you're Sam Bird's dad now.
I'm Sam Bird's dad. Yeah, are you still on the radio? And I'm just gratified that they remember. You know, and it's
There you go.
I always got a kick out of it. I'm you know, I remember the first time I was on a billboard, and I waited until dusk, and I got in the car and I drove to the billboard and I stood under it and I went, "Holy shit! Look at that!"
Awesome.
You know, like that's kind of part of the joy to me of the of being in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My favorite story about lost notoriety is I was doing a comedy show a couple of years ago, and Pat Hickey, who writes for the Montreal Gazette or wrote for the Montreal Gazette, longtime sports writer, and he dabbles in stand-up comedy, and he was on the bill, and he was driving to the show with his wife, and his wife said, "Who else is on the show tonight?" And Pat said, "Well, Ted Bird is the MC." And she goes, "Ted Bird? I thought he died."
Oh dear.
No, still here.
I want to ask you, Eleanor, because now that I'm retired, I've been starting to sniff around as an ACTRA member. I've always, on my bucket list, I've always wanted to be on a movie set. And I live out in British Columbia where a lot of productions are done. And I'm in the Fraser Valley where all of June and July, Hallmark is doing their 90th Christmas production. And I thought a nice way to get on a movie set and just watch what happens. You know, I don't want to be the guy in the movie set going, "What are you doing there?" I'd like to be.
You want to do some background performing?
I can be old the guy on bench. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I could be guy who walks by grocery store.
Well, yeah.
Is that a difficult thing to pursue?
You can get an agent that will represent
There are
background.
agents for background performers?
Yes.
Really?
Or you can let the casting know that you are interested to be on their list of background performers.
Right.
You're an ACTRA member.
Right.
And that would be how you could get in that way.
Is that a hindrance being an ACTRA member? Are they looking for non-union people
No,
to walk by camera?
you get preference of engagement
Oh, is
being
that
an
right?
ACTRA member.
Oh,
Absolutely.
look at that.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
They're long days,
Yeah, this is what everybody.
but we're appreciative of the background because they fill up all the atmosphere of what a production needs.
Well, when you watch a movie that's set in the 40s or 50s, it's fascinating how much that lends to the story and the production, the costumes and the background people. And, I don't know if I'm the only one who watches that, but on particular shows like the show, I'm not going to do it any justice, but there was a show about the Porters in Montreal.
Yeah.
I think it was shot
In Winnipeg.
It was shot in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And it was the story of
The railroad porters?
Yeah,
Yeah.
largely the black community
Yeah.
served as railroad porters. It's a wonderful Canadian production.
It
And-
won tons of awards,
Yeah,
and then
and-
CBC pulled it. For
Well, I
whatever
think they
reason.
lost their American funding.
Perhaps.
I think that's what happened.
It
yeah.
was a series?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it
Oh,
was.
really, eh?
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was just terrific. And what really lent a lot to that production was, I think, the location and the way they dressed up the background. It was like a time
Absolutely.
machine.
Yeah.
It was just fantastic.
Yeah, so you notice it, and other people will notice
Yeah.
it subliminally. It will
Right.
carry the story, and they're an important piece of every production.
Okay, so maybe I'll be old guy on bench.
Why
time.
not?
There you
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
I could be man doing crossword puzzle.
Yes.
I could be that.
Yeah,
I do
and-
that
and
all
so-
the time anyway.
Somebody's told me that your call time can be 7 a.m. and you might be sitting there until 5:30.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
afternoon.
Set days are very, very long.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why we implement rules and breaks and
right.
Why don't you audition
Dinners
for an
and-
actual role?
Because
Because you're not a professional actor.
I'm
I'll
not-
tell you.
yeah,
I'll
I'm
tell
not
you
a
a story
professional
about that.
actor.
I'm an ACTRA member,
Right.
but I'm not an actor.
Yeah.
I think I can dabble in voice acting a little bit, but on-screen acting. My former agent sent me to a commercial audition one time. She called me up and she said, "I got something that's just right for you. Creepy porn shop owner."
was that her April Fool's joke?
No, she thought that I'd be good for it. So she sent me the script, and I looked at the script, and I thought, okay, here's how I can do this this way. I think I could be convincing if I do it this way. And so I went to the audition and I did it the way that I thought I could be convincing. And the director said, okay, now try it like this. Deer in the headlights,
Right.
because I'm not a professionally trained actor.
Well,
so
thank
I
you
didn't
for
know,
saying that, because
I
there is a
didn't-
difference.
Oh, there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to take direction
Right.
because I'm not a professionally trained, experienced actor. And that's,
Well,
to
it's
me,
why-
that's a message to anybody who says, oh, anyone can do acting. All
yeah.
you got to do is just act.
Well, people said that about the radio game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because it looks easy, or we made it look easy, I guess. But I think that helped us have respect for that.
For acting, 100%.
Yeah,
Oh my
100%. It
it's
looks
such a
easy,
craft.
but yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
Well, you don't work with a script,
no. And,
which is amazing.
Yeah.
We work with a script.
Right,
People
but-
automatically assume that all performers are great public speakers.
Yeah, no.
And we have to keep saying it's different. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you can't be good at it. Everybody could be good at something, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the same. We work with a script. People
Well,
who
it's
do
just
who have
it's
a lot of improv skills are very good at free public speaking. But
I think
it's
it's
a
like-
talent that you definitely
yeah,
have.
I think it's a
Well,
In
it's
radio.
also it's a craft like acting.
Yeah.
And it's something
Exactly.
that
it's
you
like a
hone
good
over
carpenter.
time.
A good
Exactly.
carpenter. You
Yeah.
know, like over the years, you just get better and better
Yeah.
at it. If
Yeah.
you
You just
work
don't
at
bang
the
yourself
craft.
on our.
Right.
We don't bang ourselves on the thumb as much as we used to. We
Yeah.
still do sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I never pursued it. Andrea Kenyon called me 30 years ago, 25 years ago. There was a movie shooting in Montreal, and it had something to do with the murder of a radio host. And she thought it would be cool if she gave some of the morning men in the city small, tiny parts in the movie. And I was too dumb and too busy and I agreed to go on this audition, and I didn't prepare myself for it. And I had a horrible audition. I didn't memorize the lines. It
An
was
actor
just-
always prepares.
yeah, and I didn't know that because I didn't know anything about the craft, and that frightened me away from even trying to pursue it. You know, I sometimes think if somebody gave me a line to say, "Hey Mac," I could do that. But I've often wondered, and maybe you
You could play a radio guy though.
There you go. I could play a radio guy.
And then maybe they would say, "We want you to say something along the lines of this,"
Yeah,
and then
oh,
you would
that I
just
could do.
improvise
Yeah,
it.
that-
I did that once. I was a sportscaster
Yeah.
on what was the high school show that they shot in Montreal for a while?
Student bodies.
Was it Student Bodies? No, it was something else. And Larry Day was there. Larry Day was in it, and another guy whose face is right in front of me, and I can't remember his name, and I know you know him. But him and I played sportscasters.
But I don't know if you know
something blue something blue.
Blue Mountain.
Maybe.
Was it Blue Mountain?
I don't know if you notice this, but I find when they hire people from our business, you know, a lot of news anchors get hired to be fake news anchors, and when they're on screen, you can tell they're not very good actors. It's like instead of just being themselves and doing the news actor thing, they're reading a script and they become a little bit more wooden. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just,
Probably because there's no teleprompter.
there you go.
I played a news anchor person one time, and I found it one of the most challenging roles I'd ever played because I had to memorize this big, huge paragraph that was so out of context of everything and very, the way a news thing would be without a teleprompter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I, made a mistake in my first 3 lines, and I was like, oh. And I had to go into my own Zen place to be like, don't worry, because the director was like, no, that's fine. I want to fix this slide and I want to fix that. And he wasn't concerned at all. But I was like, holy crap, I got to get through this entire monologue without making any mistakes because there's no cut. And when I left that job, I did it. I proceeded after that. I did as many takes as they needed, and I did it clear every single time. I was so proud of myself. Mm-hmm. But when I got to my car, I was like, that was the most stressful experience ever. And I'm pretty sure that a news anchor is reading from a teleprompter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that would probably be the difference, that they were like, oh my God, now I have to remember all of those words.
Can you, it's one of the things that fascinates me about acting. One of my favorite speeches in movies of all time and one of my favorite actors of all time is Spencer Tracy. And he gives a speech at the end of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner that is so long and so moving and so emotional and so powerfully delivered. And I think it was his last film appearance. And every time I watch it, after I'm finished crying, I always think to myself, how the hell did he memorize that?
You do it.
How
our
do you?
job.
What's the?
Well,
what's
first of
your
all,
process?
when you're working as an actor constantly, you're auditioning constantly.
Yeah.
It's a muscle, so you learn.
Is there-
Everybody has a different technique
Yeah.
or what
You have a
happens,
trick
but
or-
it's a muscle in the brain that is worked a lot.
Right.
It's worked out like going to the gym, and so you're able to absorb words and memorize in a much easier fashion than maybe just if you hadn't been doing it at all. So then you would be starting from a different place, but. As a professional performer, of course, he would be able to handle that.
I think about it all the time, and it reminds me of how frightened I was in high school. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
And then flatline.
Fine.
Like to me, it would be so hard.
It is hard.
Yeah,
It's
well, it's
not.
craft,
It's
eh?
it's craft, and that's and that's what is different between craft and talent. And you can't teach talent. You either have it or you don't. And then craft and techniques and skills you pick up along the way, and you get better and you hone them, and you get better and better.
That's why
as you go along.
I wanted to ask you that because especially with artistic pursuits, I think it's in there. And
Yeah.
you either got that
You either have it
little
or you don't,
splash
yeah.
of that you can polish.
Yeah,
And work
you can
at.
teach technique, you
Yeah.
can teach skills, you can teach,
Yeah.
different things to help you along the way.
Yeah.
But talent,
Yeah.
I don't think
What-
you can. You have it or you don't.
My favorite, one of my favorite moments with you, Ted, was when, I don't remember what we were shooting.
It was a comedy special for Global.
And wasn't it the director that said, "Could you be any more wooden?" they wanted
I
Ted
had to do a turn.
He had to turn to another camera, and he turned like this. That's when we knew.
Yeah.
That's when we knew.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah,
be any
okay.
more wooden?
All right. We should, just before we get ready to close, you've been awfully gracious with your time and putting up with our nonsense.
It's a pleasure to be
Eleanor.
here. I grew up with you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I didn't say I liked you guys. I just said I grew up with you guys. No, I'm joking.
I think what she's saying
you
is
were my
she-
morning.
I put up with you guys.
Yes,
I think is what
yeah.
she's trying to
You
say.
were my morning comfort to hear your voices. And
Oh,
made me
God
comfort.
love you.
Gave me
We've-
comfort. So thank you. Thank you for those years.
We've got a couple of more sponsors to thank, and I'll start by saying thanks to Normand and his family because it's a family-run business. It's a theme with Ted and I. We love family-run businesses because you get to know those families and how they do business. And then as a spokesperson, you feel very comfortable telling people, go there. I promise you're going to have a nice experience. That's the experience at Matelas Bonheur. It's a Quebec-owned, Quebec-run, family-owned business that largely deals with Canadian suppliers, takes a lot of pride in that, designed beautiful stores that started in a small store on Gouin Boulevard in Saint-Geneviève over 25 years ago. And I think it's the best place to get a good night's sleep. Not that you go there and sleep, but that you go there and they will help you find a mattress that will change the way you sleep. It's what they do, and it's all that they do. When you go to buy a mattress at Matelas Bonheur, you're not going to have to lie down on mattresses that are between the couches and the washing machines. That's not what they do. Their whole business is designed around a better night's sleep. Sheets, linens, pillows, mattresses, headboards, duvets, anything that you need to make your sleep a lot more accomplished and having a better night's rest. The family at Matelas Bonheur will make sure that you get that rest. When you walk into the store, you'll be welcomed by a really well-trained employee who will ask you a couple of questions about how you sleep and do you like to sleep on your side or your back or whatever, and you're looking for a firm mattress, those kinds of questions. And then they'll leave you alone. They won't pressure you, which is another thing I hate about shopping. I don't like having a salesman follow you around, nattering behind you. That won't happen. It's a nice experience at one of their many locations across the greater Montreal area. The best place to start is matelasbonheur.ca.
Terry had mentioned during the podcast today that my car blew up, and serendipitously for me, I had a loaner from Jaguar Land Rover Laval at the time that my car blew up. My ex-wife was actually driving it when it blew up. It didn't actually blow up. It died. The engine died. So all of that to say, every time Terry comes into the city to do the podcast, one of our other sponsors, Jaguar Land Rover Laval, gives me a courtesy car to ferry him around town in. And this time around, they gave us a Jag XF30T sedan. What a beautiful, beautiful vehicle that is. A spectacular vehicle. And we're talking about family-owned businesses. The DeCubelis brothers, Nino and Renato, who own Jaguar Land Rover Laval, a high-end shop, to be sure. And they also own McLaren Montreal, which is even higher end. They are the most down-to-earth people that you would ever meet in your life. And that permeates throughout the dealership. When my car died the other day, I said to the sales manager at Jaguar Land Rover Laval, Thomas, I told him the story, and he said, well, I'm going to help you get something. Yeah. And I said, I don't have the budget for a Jag or a Land Rover. He goes, well, what's your budget? And I told him my budget, and it was embarrassing because it's nowhere near what you would spend on a Jaguar or a Land Rover. And he said, I'm going to find you something. He didn't have to do that. No, he doesn't have to do that, but he's going to do that because he's a decent Joe, and they're all decent people there. It's, the product speaks for itself, Jaguar and Land Rover. The difference at Jaguar Land Rover Laval, what really makes them stand out is what honest and decent people they are. And I would go there before I went to Matelas Bonheur because then you could take your new Jag and you can strap your new mattress to the top of it.
Yeah,
get it home. You'd save on delivery.
Or just hold it on the roof. Stick your hand out the window and just hold it down on the roof. Yeah. That's safe.
JaguarLaval.com and LandRoverLaval.com. And thanks to Nino and Renato and their marketing director, Adrian McGrath, for continuing to support the podcast.
Eleanor, do you have to run for your position again, and will you?
I do have to run for it again. It's a 2-year
mandate
term.
Yeah.
And yes, my name has been thrown in. So our elections come up in a couple of weeks.
Wow. It's short. That's a short run, isn't it?
It is a very short run. I threw my name in again because there was so much to learn, and I took on so much in these last 2 years that I would love another run at it. But we'll see.
How do you know if the members are happy?
Well, we have a lot of members suffering right now because of our dispute.
Right.
They have lost an income, and it's unconscionable that the ICA has locked them out for 13 months now. Wow. So that is making a lot of our membership very unhappy.
Yeah.
But we do strive with each of our agreements to come up with good stuff, with increases in our wages and making sure that our workplace is safe and good. And so we do strive always to make our membership happy, and we hope that we get out of this dispute ASAP. So we are working on it daily.
Vote Eleanor.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got my vote. Eleanor, thank you. You've been a terrific guest. It was a lot of fun chatting and debating, and you really opened a window for, not just people who are performers, but I think people who don't know anything about the business.
Awesome.
You open the door and show people behind the door. It was nice of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
No, listen.
Tweet sheet?
Oh, the tweet sheet.
Oh, for God's sake.
We almost forgot about the tweet sheet.
What
and
would
I
we do
I
without
curated
Poseidon?
this specifically
For Eleanor.
I know, and yes, what would we do without
this
Poseidon?
This is how fascinating you were. We got completely carried away, and I forgot about it.
What's the tweet
Thanks
sheet?
to our
Are you on
producer,
Twitter?
Poseidon.
Yes.
Poseidon, thank you.
No problem.
He's the man.
He is the man.
Yes.
On my morning radio program on Light 106.7, which I'm sure you listen to every
Sure.
morning from 5:30 to 9, I do something called the tweet sheet, where I take 3 what I think are funny tweets, and I share them with the audience. And on this program, because we're not restricted by broadcast regulations, we get the saltier tweets, and we use them. We are not using those in this instance, however, because you are a dog person.
Yes.
And I know that you lost your beloved Walter recently.
Yes, I did.
And your beloved Humphrey as well. Both dachshunds, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Dachshunds.
Yeah. Yep. And do you have any dogs now, or are you?
I do. I still have 2 dogs.
Oh, okay, good.
I have
Sorry.
I have Scooter that I rescued just before COVID, and Ginger that I inherited from a friend whose mother passed away.
I was just going to say, one of the things I love about that story, Eleanor, is the rescue part. You rescue senior animals.
Senior dogs, too.
That makes me cry because They deserve to have a...
And I have a little lovebird
Oh.
named Tony that I found on my street.
Oh,
He was just walking around.
really?
Yeah.
Injured?
He had a bashed in beak and
Oh.
something with his wing, and he was just munching on a piece of grass. And I was like, wow, you're awful beautiful to be outside here. I don't think you belong here. And so I scooped him up, went everywhere around the neighborhood trying to look for who could possibly be the
Right.
owner, all the vets and the shops. And they were like, hey, crazy lady, this dog, this bird is yours.
So it was not a wild bird. It was...
No, they said
Yeah.
the wings weren't clipped, so he could have flown in from anywhere. They were like, he could have flown in from Albany. Who knows? So I had no choice but to keep him. My sister and I pinky swore we would never get birds as pets because we grew up with birds. And we didn't have sociable birds. So we were like, they're crazy. They're dirty. Like they're trapped in a cage. We thought the whole
Squawking
thing
all
was
the time.
horrible. Yeah, but Tony is fully trained and he behaves exactly like the dogs. And he spends most of his day on my shoulder.
Nice.
And he runs free. We clip his wings so that he doesn't fly away and get lost. So but he stampers around the house and
That's cool.
Yeah, isn't it though?
he
That's
eats out of
cool.
the dog bowls and he bathes in their water bowl and he puts up
And
with them.
do they get on with him?
They do, very
nice.
much so. And his behavior has now, it's a lovebird. So they're supposed to be, in French, it's inséparable. They're supposed to have two. But the vet said that I could be his inseparable. But the dogs are his inseparable as well.
Isn't that
So
nice?
he
That's
mimics
very
their
sweet.
behavior.
That's
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I've curated this tweet sheet with you in mind. They're all
Okay.
dog-related
Okay.
tweets, okay? So
right.
here we go. We usually do
Just
3. but-
1 second, because I got to bring it up for the people at home as well.
okay.
Thank you.
Here's the first one from @mom, though. Me, in or out? Dog. Yep. Me. Which one? Dog. You bet.
That pretty much sums up my life.
So true, right?
Very true.
From @Cashman Actor. In an ideal world, dogs would be in charge. Dog mayors, doggy teachers. The puppy bowl would be the actual Super Bowl. And us, we'd be paraded around in some Great Dane's designer purse in stupid bee costumes on TikTok. And most crucially, we'd be the goodest of boys.
Yes.
Isn't that
Good one.
great? Now, if you're on Twitter, you must follow this account.
Christopher Ashman?
No, the next one.
Okay.
Thoughts of Dog.
Okay.
Do you know Thoughts
no,
of Dog?
I don't.
Oh, Eleanor.
Okay.
Thoughts of Dog are @dog feelings. The human wiped away my eye booger, only to put it back onto me, pet it back onto me. I have never experienced such betrayal.
It's true. It's very true.
And Thoughts of Dog also does great lists, so we've added a bonus tweet, one of his lists. Goob morning. I've made a list of the things I'd like to happen today. 3, pancakes. 9, nice walk with limited running.
Yes.
5, nap in the sun. 5, pancakes. 2, a little snuggle.
Yeah, very good.
Isn't that great? You've got to follow
this
that,
person
Eleanor. Yeah.
talks dog for sure.
He's got, or she, I don't know if it's he or a she, millions of followers. I don't know exactly how many million, but I think it's 3 point some
well,
million
that's-
followers. Yeah. Thoughts of Dog or @dog_feelings. If
Are you
you're-
on Twitter?
I am.
You are. Okay. What's your account, Eleanor? You want to follow?
Or do you not want to tell us?
Okay.
You don't have to. if you
That's
don't
all
want
right. We'll Google Eleanor.
to. Yeah, we'll find it.
Eleanor Noble.
It's
Can't hide-
Eleanor
can't hide from
Noble,
us.
Okay.
CLO, I believe.
Well, thanks again for coming.
Thank
We
you so
appreciate it.
much.
A
Thank you
lovely
so much
episode.
for having me.
It was a great delight to
Yeah,
have
it was
you.
good fun.
It was a great
It was, Pierre. I agree 100%. I know exactly
There
what he
are
was trying
diction
to
classes
say.
that you can take if you want to
Well,
pursue
that's-
your career.
That's the great thing about background performers. You don't have to say anything.
There you go. There you go.
Standing by, the Terry and Ted podcast has been brought to you by the UPS Store Canada, delivering more for small businesses in Canada.